Half hour or so. I am your favorite little witch, Jody Ann. I'm here in your earbuds today. I'm so happy that you have joined me. A little bit of housekeeping. I want to remind you that links to all of my beautiful guests, all of my resources, not most of what I talk about is out of my head though, but links to my YouTube, to my socials, everything can always be found on my website. And my website is www.jodyanpsychicmedium.com. That's where you'll find show notes. That's where you'll find everything you need. So today's episode is one where I talk about a topic. What I've chosen to talk about today is the idea of sacred space and setting circle. Now, I'm going to have to try really hard because there are a lot of words I have used for the practice of calling a magical circle. I've talked about it as just saying circle, sacred space, calling the quarters, setting space, ceremonial space, casting a circle. All of that has been used. So I'm going to try really, really, really hard today not to flip between multiple titles for the same practice. I have another disclaimer. I have been calling circles and creating sacred space for, a number of years, right? I went through my first and second degree of Wicca more than 25 years ago. And since then, I have received other traditional trainings, both in British traditional witchcraft, fairy traditions, and North American shamanic traditions. I've practiced with people who are versed in the Cabal. I have practiced with elemental witches. And many of these traditions hold similar beliefs around the creation of sacred space or ceremonial space. Within my personal practice, it's all kind of smooshed together, and I can't always remember where each piece came from. So I reserve the right to remember incorrectly, and I also decided I'm going to talk in more general terms and broader brush strokes today. I think it'll serve you better if we have a general discussion that centers around the concept of sacred space than to dissect all the origins of how I personally call down the quarters and who I put in what direction. Okay? Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense, my lovies. So the other little caveat I want to talk about is the idea of being safe. So yes, calling in a circle is a way of creating safety so that you can have boundaries and a safe, clear space, a sacred space to work your magic in. You are still inherently safe. You are inherently protected within the realms you walk in, okay? Nothing can energetically affect you or your life without your permission. So sitting in the truth that you are inherently safe, that only what you allow can affect you, let's unpack the idea of calling circle and calling sacred space. Why do we cast a circle? Now, I was taught way back in the beginning of my training, like 100 years ago. Wow, come on. I was in my teens, so it definitely feels like 100 years ago. I was taught at the very beginning of my training that one of the reasons to cast a circle was that it worked like a container for energy. When you cast a circle, you're creating a space between the worlds. Within this circle is where you and your coven will work. Because this circle is between the worlds, the work done within it can shift and change the planes of reality, including our own mundane world where we all have like our muggle jobs and stuff. The circle has an energetic boundary. So the energy that's raised within this container stays there. And once we've built up that energy and we have it in that container, we can then direct it and use it for our spell work. It's kind of like catching lightning inside a jar. Now, Could we do manifestation work outside of a circle? There's a lot now going on in the internet and in the world about manifestation work and the laws of attraction, and that you just need to believe it to be it. And we can use the laws of attraction and resonation to manifest. For sure you can. I've done it. I've imagined a parking spot. I've imagined a parking spot, and I have, with all of my will, I have believed I will get parking in downtown Vancouver in the middle of the week in a busy area when I have an appointment. I believe that I will get a parking spot, and I do. I've done it when I've gone to like Science World or the aquarium with my children as well. I just see that parking spot, and sure enough, in a full parkade, someone will pull out as I'm pulling in, and I get a spot. It's great manifestation work. It's based on my vibration and belief, and it works. You can get a parking spot every single time. But that is not witchcraft. So that's manifestation work, but that's not necessarily witchcraft. You are not casting a spell with your will and intention. I want to talk about this idea of taking control of your energy and your destiny and spell crafting, because it's about creating real change, intentional change. It's fundamentally different than the idea of praying or following spirit or resonating with what is in your highest and best good. When I talk about spellcraft, I am talking about intending to change a situation in your life, doing the work on a spirit level that will cascade and domino effect down into this mundane world, actually pulling the threads of reality and shifting and moving things. And I want to talk about this idea within our collective conscious and within our New Age spiritual culture. There's this idea around allowing spirit to guide our lives, to align yourself with your highest and best good, and that is spell work, and that is witchcraft. And I believe that is beautiful manifestation work. And of course, you want to be in your highest and best good, and you want to align with what is good and wonderful and resonates with your divine purpose. But that is not spell work. Doing ritual work and spell crafting is about intentionally using our will and our power to shift and change our life, to create the outcomes that favor us and align with our desires. So let that sink in, because I think the idea of women wielding this kind of power is a little frightening, and it goes against our patriarchal culture. A lot of us have internalized the idea that a woman wielding her will is dangerous. There's a lot of connotations around the word magical manipulation, or pulling strings, or imposing your will on the world, especially if you're doing it in the dead of night under a full moon, and you are changing the world to suit your needs and desires. Just think about what came into your mind when we thought about that together. Look at your feelings around that. Because a lot of us carry this ingrained thing that it's inherently bad or edgy to craft and magically change the world, to manipulate our surroundings. I mean, I know I did in the 90s as a young little witch. I thought it was super rebellious. I mean, that's part of why I came here and started walking this path. I was very rebellious and very edgy, and it felt very powerful to wield my will on the world. But I think that it's really a patriarchal, I think it's really ingrained patriarchy. And I know I harp on the patriarchy a lot, but I do think it's ingrained patriarchy that we don't feel like we're allowed to will our lives. There's some real dark connotations in our collective conscience about women imposing their will on the world. And the New Age occultists in the 70s were very vigilant about this. And so they talked a lot about the idea of "and it harm none." There was a "and it harm none" PR campaign. And in the 90s Wiccan movement, that came up as well. Because you remember, like the 80s held the satanic panic. It's kind of cute because Stranger Things, I'm watching that with my family, and season 4 is all about the satanic panic and Dungeons and Dragons and how everyone's going to be possessed by demons because they play Dungeons and Dragons. And it's a bit kind of laughable right now as we watch it in 2022. But in 1986, the satanic panic was real. Like, they were ostracizing people who were coming out as New Age pagans and who were reading tarot cards, and this whole love movement of the 70s of nature worship and goddess worship, and the rise of the Dianic covens and the New Age Wicca movement of Gardnerian and Alexandrian witchcraft. Like, they had some real PR campaigns so that people would not demonize them. And I think that these beliefs that are layered in our culture, they stem from the Christian belief system around a few things. One, around women aren't allowed to have power in a lot of fundamentalist religions, Christian and other. And also the idea that God's will and only God's will be done. That you need to align yourself with a divine plan for your life. And that God can say no to your prayers. If what you are asking for does not align with your plan or your life, that we need to accept that because God has told us no, and some other being outside of us knows what's best for us, and we just need to just accept our lot and what is given to us. Witchcraft, as I know it, is the opposite of that. It is using your inborn power and your will and your energy to create a life that you enjoy, to affect the energetic world around you, and to manipulate and curate with intention on an energetic level so that you can achieve what you desire within the physical planes and the mundane world of your life. So I'm going to offer you a nugget to chew on, right? If you are one of my lovely people that still struggles with this idea of your will and that maybe it's wrong or that there's something bad you're doing here, I want to offer to you that you are already using your willpower on a mundane level to create a life that you are happy in. You have goals in your life and you are working towards them. You take baby steps every day towards those goals. You make giant leaps sometimes. You probably have both long-term and short-term goals that you are investing your time in, your resources in, including your money, into those goals. If you're working towards a degree, you are investing your time and your money and your willpower to change your educational station in life and eventually your financial station in life. If you are going through steps in your workplace to level up your career and become a CEO or a manager rather than a more worker bee, you are manifesting your willpower, you are applying your intelligence and your charisma and your amazing skills that you have in your profession to level up your life and your position. Maybe for better vacationing hours, maybe for more freedom, maybe for more money, maybe because it would challenge you more to have more responsibility and problem solving. But you're investing your will to create change in your mundane life. We make decisions every day about our life and our life path, and we will things into existence all the time. So, if we look at the idea of wanting to get a contract or a promotion or a raise at your work, what might you do? You would make yourself valuable and visible to the person who can give you these things. Maybe you put together a portfolio. Maybe you have a meeting. Maybe you take on smaller projects to showcase your awesomeness. These are deliberate steps you've taken to improve your position in the workplace. You don't put a caveat in your portfolio around that you should only be hired if it's in alignment with the divine plan of your life. You just go out there and you work your butt off and you put your energy into your goal. And doing that does not make you evil, it does not make you selfish, and it does not make you manipulative. It makes you a boss. Using your willpower on an energetic level is the same thing. Wow, that was quite a digression of self-empowerment and patriarchal rants. So let's get back to casting a circle. Now that we know what we're doing it in and why it should be a clear space, we want a clear space because we want the energy within our spells when we are gathering energy to change and create and do spell work. We want it to be undiluted and we want it to be contained so we can raise power, weave it into what we want, and send it out in the world. There's lots of ideas around casting a circle. There's this beautiful idea of having a room in your house that is just your ritual room. I have never lived in a space where I have had a room reserved for ritual. So I do not have a physical circle drawn on my floor. As a young witch, I've created a physical circle before with salt, or I have drawn it into the earth when I'm outside with a stick. And I think I used to draw it with chalk. I do have a memory of drawing a circle with chalk because I could. It wasn't permanent, so I could vacuum it up. I think I decided it was less messy than salt for a while in my 20s. One of my friends, she does have a space for ritual within her home, and she has a circular carpet to represent the circle, which I think is really cool. Although I haven't had a space where I have a ritual room that I can dedicate to coven meetings and spell work and have my altar on it, I do have a space inside my home where my altar is. And the candles and the center of my altar, I actually take it when I go to other people's homes or when I create a ritual space outside. I have the main piece of my altar can come with me, my centerpiece of my altar. And I think it's important to recognize that when we repetitively create a sacred working space in a room or even in a field or in a yard, we will eventually magically imprint on that space. Think about when you walk into a sacred grove that people have been practicing in for a long time, or when you are at a meditation circle, you know, those meditation spirals, or when you go into a church. The air, the space, it has a sacredness to it. It has a resonation to it of peace and beauty. So that kind of imprint is created within your space when you cast repetitively in that space. Now, in the traditions that I've been in, we will call each direction and an element for each direction. And you can find a lot of this stuff online. What to put in each corner, in each direction, as you call it down. Even though it's a circle, I do still call it the corners. I'm not aware of a big deviation in this. Earth is in the north, air is in the east, fire is in the south, water's in the west. And then on top of those 4 elements, you can layer a bunch of different beautiful things. In the Native American tradition, you would layer in the different animals. I'm not going to list the animals because the different indigenous healers and teachers I've known, they nuance it for the traditional teachings from their elders. So I'm not going to list them because they do zhuzh and shift a little bit, and I don't want to get it wrong. If you are using the archangels, it tends to be Raphael in the east, Michael in the south, Gabriel in the west, and Uriel in the north. Most traditions put ancestors, when you call them in, they put the ancestors in the north. It really depends. Any way you call in, there's a lot of information you can find online. That's just like the tiniest overview. Many traditions recognize Gaia below their feet, or the underworld below their feet. They'll recognize source energy or goddess energy or sky above. Yeah. The idea is once you've called in and created this space, you now have a container to work within, a safe container to work within. So, okay, so we've talked about how a circle acts as a barrier and it contains the energy we're creating. We've talked about how we can use that energy to manipulate and do spell work and how we want that energy undiluted, right? One of the reasons we want to have a circle is whatever we're creating, we don't want just regular unwanted energy in it. Think about you make soup in a pot, you don't make it in a river, right? That'd be kind of weird to make soup in a river. I don't think I'm just explaining that well. Okay, so our circle will contain the energy that we are building so that we can create with it, so we can do spell work with it, so we can do transformation work with it, or we can release it and ask Gaia or whatever goddess you have called in to transmute it and transform it and release it. All those things can happen within a sacred circle. And at the very beginning, we talked about no energies can affect you without your permission, right? I would still cast a circle for any work you do. Even though you are inherently protected in your divine right, nothing can affect you energetically without your permission. One of the things I have seen, though, is when we have unpracticed personal boundaries, when we're not great at our own personal or emotional boundaries, we would probably not be very good at spiritual boundaries either. Does that make sense? It's a little bit silly to think that if we are not able to say no to people in our life, that our spiritual boundaries would be firm and well held. If you can't hang up on a telemarketer, you may co-sign permission to something you don't want messing with your energy or your spells while you're doing them if you are not inside a sacred circle. Like when we are doing magic work, we look amazing. We're sparkly, we're divine, we're channeling energy. It's a beautiful process. We're in creative flow. If we were to look at that in an auric spectrum, dazzling, baby, you are dazzling. You will attract all kinds of energetic attention while you do this work. So think about it. When you're doing work, it's kind of like putting a plate of cookies in the middle of a schoolyard and expecting no one to take a cookie. That you could just leave a whole box of Oreos open on a schoolyard and not a single person would take one. I'm going to give you an example why I think it's incredibly important to cast a circle and to create a spiritual boundary when you're doing all kinds of work. For a while, I was attending as kind of like public ritual. It wasn't really a ritual though. It was a gathering. It was more a gathering of like-minded people. And they had an intention to come together and create positive energy and send out love and beautiful vibrations into the world and to support each other. They did a lot of singing. They did a lot of crystal bowl work. It was beautiful, very beautiful. Their intention was to raise their personal consciousness, to heal within, and to give out beautiful, lovely vibes to creation. They created a beautiful and powerful energy when they did this. It was lovely. There was a huge level of community and there was a deep level of trust. They had like a facilitator who led the circle, like an elder, and that person would call in and create sacred space for the group. And she was beautiful to watch. So there was a couple circles where the facilitator didn't attend. They were away on some kind of teaching retreat. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. And they left another trusted person to lead for that month. The new leader, I don't know if they were excited or if they didn't have the training or the understanding, but they didn't call in sacred space. They did not invoke protection for the circle. I noticed it, it was fine. But what was interesting is as the energy in the room started building and as the vibrations were getting higher and people were emotional and lovey and everything. And we sang a lot of songs invoking deities, right? Like Kalima and Ganesh and stuff. So what I noticed is this time when the deities, when I could feel their presence and feel them in the room, especially Kalima, she did not come to that space in her most compassionate mother form. Her more destructive form of Kali was also there. And I mean, she was doing beautiful, transformative work, but it was a little bit different flavor and a little bit different intensity than how the circle usually worked with that energy. When I noticed this, I started really tuning in and using my senses and looking around the circle. And what I could see is there were quite a few lower vibrational entities just kind of there. I mean, they weren't really hurting anyone. They weren't really doing anything. They were feeding off the energy. That's for sure. I mean, no one was harmed. There was no inherent damage. The energy in that group was much more chaotic than usual. And I'm sure that anyone who did not have good personal protection and good personal energetic boundaries or auric cleansing practices probably felt less refreshed and less rejuvenated for the rest of the week than they usually did. And the intention of the gathering to resonate love throughout the world was diminished because the energy being raised through the song and the community coming together, it wasn't contained and directed properly. It was just sloppily spilling out and being consumed by things it wasn't intended for. After that evening, I did pull away from that group. It was my personal feeling that if a facilitator is not going to teach proper etiquette, energetic etiquette, and protocols around their spiritual teaching, that I didn't want to be a member of that community, because I think it's important to give any seeker that comes to you, if you have experience, to give them full, complete knowledge. So, yeah, I guess that's all I'm going to say about that. Well, I think that's all I have to say about sacred space. I know I didn't get into how to cast and the big nuances of it, and there's so much information online. There's so much to there's so much to circle casting. I know everyone can Google it. I'm trying really hard not to give you Google's information, but to give you my personal information as a practitioner that has been practicing for a very long time. Calling in circle is one of the most important skills you will have as a witch, and it can be an elaborate, beautiful ceremony you go through, or it can be a quick check of your surroundings, grounding, centering. It's sometimes tricky for me because I've been doing this so long and I'm used to feeling the difference in a space when I have that protective layer of a circle, and when I don't, I don't know how to give the knowledge to you of it used to take me 20 minutes to call in a circle. Now I can do it in less than 5, and there's no difference to the beauty of it. They both work. And if I'm feeling really elaborate and delicious, I can still take 20 minutes calling in. And a lot of times, I do like it. I do like to take the time and really acknowledge the helpers and the directions and the elements that serve me on a regular basis, that lend their energy, their protection. I have a practice that I will share with you. When I'm doing deeper work, I have a protective circle around my home that is loose, and I have protections around my home. And then I cast a circle when I'm doing work. Now, if I'm doing very big work, if I'm doing heavy work that has deeper, I do a lot of chain breaking and cord breaking. So if I'm doing deeper work that I feel is much more sensitive, I've begun a practice where I will cast multiple circles. So I will reinforce the casting around my house. And then I will cast around my house, I mean my property where I live, including my yard. And then I'll cast a tighter circle around my home, like the physical structure where I live. And then I will cast a circle just within the space I'm standing in, where I'm working in. I remember reading in books a long time ago the idea of what if you cast your circle, and a lot of times we used to draw it on the floor, right? You would have a physical barrier. It helps you project with your mind where that physical barrier is and reinforce that energetic wall. Someone would inherently leave something, a lighter perhaps, that we needed to light candles outside of our physical circle. And we would actually draw a door, like pull back the circle in the door and let them out and let them back in again. Really respecting those boundaries. There's a lot to it around casting your willpower out into the world and actually creating this space that is sacred and between the worlds, somewhere between the physical and the astral, where things are coming together so that you can wend and weave things properly. I have forgotten to uncast circles. When I've cast a more loose circle, I've forgotten to uncast it, which leads to, I found my toddlers being grumpy at the time, or I would get grumpy and I was like, oh, I'm not all the way finished my work. I've left this open, and I would have to go back and close circle and tie things off. And that's just as important as creating this space as well. Nowadays, I don't use a physical line anymore. I know where I cast in my home. I cast in the same room, the same place all the time near my altar. I know where I'm casting, and I can physically envision that protective cocoon around me, keeping me safe and insulated from any energies. So I hope that helps. I hope that's a helpful episode for you. It's a big topic. There is a lot. If you get into Google, if you get onto some pagan pages, you will find all kinds of information around how to cast and the nuances of the different modalities and the different traditions. Well, we covered a lot, didn't we? I mean, I went down a little patriarchy rabbit hole, but I think it's important to really look at what we have received from our culture and what we've been taught about our personal power when we start stepping into a spiritual pathway that's all about empowering ourselves, that's about caring for ourselves, that's about growth and prosperity and all that deliciousness. Because you are very powerful. You are inherently divine. And I hope that this helps you and that you continue. I hope you subscribe. And that we can meet again in the earbud coven. This is one of my worst sign-offs. I'm very ungrounded. One of my kids just came home and I have to take him to an appointment. So, Sacred circles. For everything relating to the podcast, how you can book a reading with me, how you can contact me, any events I'm hosting, any classes I am teaching, that will all be up on my website, www.jodiannepsychicmedium.com. Other than that, take care, my loves. This has been a witching half hour or so.